Aged Care Steps recently performed some research regarding consumer attitudes to financial advice on aged care. Joining me today is Louise Biti to talk about some of the findings of that research. Welcome, Louise.
Thanks, Darren.
Now, when you presented this research, there was one area that you said was absolutely unchanging over the years with in regard to aged care and advice and when people seek advice. What was that unchanging element?
I think it would have to be that clients are still leaving it to point crisis before they seek any sort of advice, or even in fact before they even start to think about aged care. Aged care has all those negative connotations. None of us want to think that's in our future. None of us want to deal with the issues. And so everybody leaves it until a crisis has happened. It's now, absolutely imperative that mum or dad cannot live in the home any longer and need to make the move or need to access some sort of care. And we always joke about the fact that there's all the conversations in the hospital car parks, but it's a reality. And we're finding that still, that people are being told the news in hospital, mum can't go home, and then standing in the hospital car park completely confused and alarmed and trying to sort out what to do. And we think we're not seeing that shift at all.
Is there anything advisors can do to try and change this attitude?
It's a hard one, because I think human nature is always going to leave that till crisis point. But I think as financial planners, we've got an obligation to start having the conversations earlier. Start talking to our clients, getting them to be planning ahead, getting them to start thinking in advance, and creating the awareness with clients. So the more that financial advisors can be proactive in talking to clients, raising the issue, highlighting the importance of planning ahead, seeking advice, the messages will start to get through surely but slowly.
So when we talk about pre-planning, how important is that to take away the emotional aspects out of the decision-making process?
The emotions are always going to be there because, as I said, it's an emotional process we're dealing with. But I think the more knowledge you've got in advance, it can start to mitigate some of those emotional factors. The more preparation that clients have done, the more they've got a sound basis and a plan for overriding some of those emotional aspects as well. So I think it's really, really critical, because in an emotional state, they aren't taking in important information. They can be making irrational decisions. They can be thinking about the wrong things in the context of what they should be making decisions around. So I think the pre-planning means they've got some background information that they can draw on. Hopefully they've got a plan in place where an advisor can get the family back in and say, remember we went through this. Remember these are the issues we talked about. These were the steps we said we would need to put in place, and these were the things that you, your mum, your dad, the family highlighted as being most important. So let's work through those. So I think they're really important.
Right. Now, speaking about concentrating on the wrong things, Aged Care Steps has identified what you guys call the 3 Gs that you have to deal with.
Yes.
What are they, and how should advisors go about addressing them?
Okay, well, the 3 Gs, very simply, that you've got driving the aged care decisions is a combination of grief, guilt, and greed. And I think in every scenario we see those 3 emotions at play in varying different degrees. So for financial advisors dealing with this situation, I think a lot of it is about recognising them, but it's upskilling our ability to help families identify those and to navigate those, and to be able to get in place what the really important issues are. So grief, we should acknowledge it, that even though the person's parents are still alive, there's a very big shift in the dynamics of the relationship, so there will always be a grieving process there. There's a lot of guilt associated with, I should be looking after my mum, or I should be looking after my dad, and I'm made to feel bad that I'm putting them into some sort of care scenario. So again, I think the pre-planning can definitely help with that, to be able to identify that we've talked about this, and while there's an ideal for families looking after each other, that's not a reality in many cases, and you had mum or dad's permission that this was okay and here's the steps we need to take. So I think the guilt one is very much a pre-planning and awareness of it. The greed, I think, is about being aware of it, and about bringing back every conversation to say, because there's a lot of financial decisions, and it's about bringing those conversations back to the client at the question of the scenario, and saying, now how would this work for mum? What are the implications for mum? So that as financial planners, they can identify whether the decisions are being driven by the children's inheritance impatience, as we also call it, or whether it's being driven by a true need to get the right care for mum or dad. And also, again, pre-planning can have helped with that. Making sure the right people were nominated as powers of attorney. Making sure the family understood what financial decisions would need to be made. So overcoming those 3 Gs of aged care, pre-planning, skills with the advisor to facilitate better discussions, and always being vigilant and aware of elder abuse, which is probably one of the areas most important going forward.
Right. Now, part of the research went into what some of the challenges and fears are of people who are actually in aged care facilities. What did you uncover there?
Overwhelmingly, number 1 is about affordability. People are very afraid of not being able to afford it. They hear large numbers being thrown around for what the refundable accommodation deposits are, and worry how they can manage those. Again, information, awareness, planning, strategy, advice, those things can help them to realise that you can make small amounts of money stretch a long way, and for many clients it is affordable, although they may need to make some choices about what sort of care they get and where they get those as well.
Now, we've spoken about consumer attitudes up until this point in time, but obviously there have to be some attractions from a financial advisory point of view as well. In terms of that, what are some of the compelling reasons for financial planners to add this to their suite of advice solutions?
Yeah, I think it's becoming a much bigger area for financial planners' business, and we're seeing a lot more advisors focus on this. A lot of them are because they've got mature businesses where their clients are now getting into that 75 plus age group. And so it's a genuine desire to be able to continue to provide advice through the next phase of that client's retirement. But overwhelmingly as well, there is also recognition that these are clients that are probably not going to be clients for much longer. And there's a really good opportunity to start building relationships with the children of your clients and helping them with their own retirement planning. First of all, helping them with navigating the aged care system for a parent, then looking at advice for their own retirement planning situation, and also to the intergenerational wealth transfer. So a lot of advisors are in this space to help existing clients. They're in this space to also have an opportunity to market to the children in what is a true valued advice piece of business as well. It's not related to product sales. There are some products, but it's not related to product sales. It's related to understanding life needs, understanding family dynamics, providing choices and helping with guidance to sort through those choices. So it is a very powerful tool for building and rebuilding client bases. And we find overwhelming that's where a lot of advisors recognise the need as well. And I should also just say that with existing clients, advisors shouldn't be just thinking about their older clients. Again, a lot of clients who are in their 50s and 60s will be the children of the parents. So they are equally, if they're your clients, it's equally as important to be providing proactive advice to them to get them thinking about how they might help their own parents and retaining those clients.
Yeah, yeah. Now the research also did a little bit of investigation into how much financial planners are charging for these services.
Yeah.
This is always a bit of a contentious issue, but how accurate have they got that yet? Is there still a long way to go before someone can say that, yes, that's an extremely valuable piece of my business from that point of view?
Yep, I think it's number one question we always get asked is, how much should I charge for this? I mean, the answer is simple. It's a business proposition that advisors are giving the advice. So advisors, and in a fee-for-service world, we need to be looking at what's it involved in, what services are you providing, what's that involve, so what's the cost to the business, what's the value proposition to the clients, and then what's a reasonable price for that piece of work and the value the client's going to receive. So it sounds simple in principle, but I think a lot of advisors are still struggling with that client value proposition. Mm-hmm. So what our research found is that probably about 5%, roughly 5% of the advisors we surveyed aren't charging anything at all for aged care advice. So they're just doing it as part of the ongoing service proposition to their clients. We're finding that another 17% are probably charging up to $1,500. Mm-hmm. But again, probably low if you're going through a full-blown advice process. What we're starting to see though is more advisors shifting into that $3,000 to $5,000 piece, and there's probably about 20-30% that are charging in that, and a very small percentage that are charging over $5,000. So I think it's at that upper end of the scale is where the advice costs need to sit. Yeah. But depending on what value you're giving to the client as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the real key, that advisors need to be much better at being able to identify and articulate. Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, when people are looking at new aspects of their business, pipeline is always really important. What indication has the research shown you that this will continue to be an area of need for Australians out there?
Overwhelmingly, the research showed that the very large majority of advisors see this as an important part of their business and as a growing part of their business as well. And I would say that we're seeing that from client demand as well, that there is certainly a lot more interest from clients coming and asking about the questions rather than just being led by the advisors as well. But it is a growing demand. It is going to be a bigger part of the business. It doesn't mean, though, that every single financial planner needs to be an expert. Mm-hmm. We're certainly not advocating that. But what we do believe is that every single client has the potential to need to plan for care in their own retirement, mm-hmm. or to help a parent or another family member through the process. So every single financial planner needs to have a solution for clients, whether that's just creating awareness and helping clients understand where they can go for help and facilitating that, whether it's looking at support that you can bring into your business to help you give that advice to clients, or whether it's outsourcing to somebody else who's going to be the specialist doing that part of the business mm-hmm. for you. So lots of different business models, and I think everybody needs to think about exactly where their interest lies, where their skill sets are, what else is happening in their business, and create the right business solution for their business and for their clients.
Mm-hmm. Financial Observer will actually be holding its annual Aged Care Summit later this year. Louise will be one of the presenters on that roadshow, but if you'd like to save the date now to prepare, that would be great. The event will be happening on the 23rd of October in Melbourne and on the 25th of October in Sydney. We hope to see you there, but we'll be presenting more aged care material in the lead up to that. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, Darren.